Hello, my friend, and welcome. This is the Lathan Minich Show. I am your host, Lathan M.S. Minich. This is my podcast. This is episode 3 entitled, What Am I Doing Here? In this episode, I'm going to talk about my intentions with this podcast and where I see it going. Before I get into any of that, first, I want to give out my contact info. The Lathan Minich Show is available on all the top podcasting platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, etc. The video version can currently be found on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/at Lathan Minich. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome. I am at Lathan Minich on Instagram and Twitter, currently known as X. And my Facebook page is facebook.com/Lathan Minich. If you want to send me an email, you can reach me at lathanminich@gmail.com. Now, without further ado, let's get on with the show. As I'm recording this, it is late June, and I just realized that 2024 is half over. And I feel like nothing's happened, or I haven't done anything with my life. And that's kind of a theme of me worrying about what am I doing with my life? How am I progressing? I talked about this on a previous episode, how last year, two big things happened. I went on the specialty diet with Dr. Jody Nishida, and I lost. At one point, I was down 80 plus pounds. I'm not really there right now. And I took a screenwriting course. So those are two very big things that happened last year that I want to say I should be proud of, but I am proud of. But the same thing last year is I'm questioning, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Da 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 da. I'm still struggling with all these issues. And I'm doing the same thing this year. So what did I do? What can I pat myself on the back for this year? Well, I mean, I started another podcast. I had a previous podcast, the Larth Media podcast, I think it was called, youtube.com/@Larth Media. So I mean that was a big deal for me because I basically gave up on the last one. And my birthday a few months ago, I told myself I'm going to start this new one. I've been talking about it for a while. And so that's where I'm at. And here I am recording my third episode 4 months after my first episode. And for the Larth Media historians out there, which there's at least one of them, I recorded the first episode of that podcast like in October, and I didn't record the second one until February. So that's like a 5-month gap. So here I am 4 months, and I'm recording my third episode, even though at the same time I'm frustrated and angry at myself that it took me this long. But anyway, enough about that. Let me just move on. Some of the reasons why I haven't been creating content. A big one would be my health. My health has been a theme throughout most of my life. I mean, I previously mentioned that a big theme of this podcast is going to be mental health and my struggling with mental health. But aside from that, I'm going to talk about physical health, just general medical health. So I probably mentioned this previously, but I got COVID in late 2022, and since then I guess I have post-COVID syndrome, which means is I still get like symptoms periodically, and here we are like a year and a half later, more than a year and a half later. And I had one of those bouts of post-COVID like about a month or so ago. I missed a few weeks off from work. As far as like how I felt, I didn't feel right for a good month and a half, 2 months, I still feel like, I don't know, just I don't feel completely healthy. Um, so I missed a bunch of work. I was sick for like a good month or two, and then I just recently had surgery. For those in YouTube land, or for those not in YouTube land, I am now pointing my elbow at the camera. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a nice big scar there. I had cubital tunnel, which is a pinched nerve in my left forearm. So they had to move the nerve or transpose it or excuse me. And that's going to be a cut. No, let me just move on. So that had me down for a few weeks, and that affects my, my mental health, my mental well-being, because I'm getting depressed because I can't freaking do anything, and I'm, partially disabled temporarily. Meanwhile, there's people who are permanently, partially, and fully disabled, and I'm complaining. So I need to check my perspective on that. Sometimes. And aside from that, as far as all the other issues that I just mentioned, wow, this is sounding like a complaint fest. Um, sleep. Sleep has long been an issue for me. I've had insomnia. I've had sleep apnea. Apparently, I don't have sleep apnea now. I did. I think I mentioned this previously. But I think the biggest issue for me now is temperature. I go to sleep, and like early in the evening, I'm too warm. I got the AC running. I got the AC blowing like right on me, and I'm warm, so I'm throwing off all my blankets and my sheet. But then later in the evening, I'm freezing my butt off because the AC is blowing right on me, so I got to throw them back on. And I don't know, it's like this, we'll call it a Goldilocks issue where it's either too warm or too hot. Do people get the Goldilocks reference? I don't know nowadays. um, so yeah, so I ended up buying a new bed. I was gonna get the 8 Sleep, which is like this really expensive, temperature controlled. They call it a pod cover, but it's basically a mattress cover which regulates your temperature in full time, monitors your temperature, tracks your sleep, does all kind of stuff. I ended up just buying a bed, traditional inner spring mattress, and an adjustable frame. And it's nice, but I'm still having those temperature issues. I feel like I'm sleeping better though. I feel more rested in the mornings, but temperature is still an issue for me. So I'm probably I'm probably still going to buy that 8 Sleep. I spent like $2,500 on on the mattress and the adjustable frame and frick some sheets and a mattress cover. Memorial Day sale at Mattress Firm. And then I think I'm gonna buy the 8 Sleep Pod 4 as well, and that's gonna run me another $2,500, $5,000. I mean, if it gets me to that point where there's no, you can't put a price on sleep. You can't put a price on a good night's rest. And as far as like all my frustrations and all my health issues and blah 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 blah, again, complaint fest. If I can't sleep, I mean everything else will be affected. So that's where I'm at right now. Is I need to get some damn rest. Pardon my French. So yeah, that's it on that front. I mean, overall, I feel okay. Like I said, I'm not sick anymore. I feel like I'm resting a little better, But I just need that extra little, I don't know, something to help me feel more energized during the day. And I think getting control of my bedroom temperature will do that. Um, so next topic, and actually, this has a lot to do with me recording this episode today. One of my coworkers found my podcast, and if you're watching or listening, you know who you are. Um, and that's something that, oh, I just thought about something else to talk about. That's something that I was always, I don't want to say I was afraid of it, but I knew it was going to happen sooner or later. Um, that either one of my friends or colleagues or my family would find the podcast. Like before the old podcast, the Larth Media podcast, I, I mean, I didn't shout from the mountaintop that I have a podcast, but I might as well have. I told everybody about it because I was so excited. Um, and I wouldn't say I was not or less excited about this one. I think I was more trepidatious about the content, the subject matter that I spoke about in that first episode. So the title of that episode, if you haven't seen or heard it, is porn and suicide. And basically one of the themes of my content creation is dealing, I want to say topics, but dealing just with things, dealing with things that make me uncomfortable. Doing this podcast, putting myself online makes me uncomfortable, which is also why I believe I'm growing from it. Overcoming challenges. And as I thought about starting another podcast, I mean, the first podcast, the Larth Media podcast, I told the world that I have bipolar depression. And that was such a big deal for me back then. It's less of a big deal for me now because I've already said it. But as I plan to start this new podcast, that's the direction I wanted to go. What makes me uncomfortable? What can I talk about that I'm freaking frightened to talk about? And those are two topics that I'm extremely uncomfortable talking about in a public forum, in many private forums too. Um, so yeah, this is a long-winded way to say that someone from work, someone I work with, found my podcast. And whereas I was kind of anxious by the idea at first, I think it kind of compelled me to record this episode. So again, if you're watching or listening, thanks. That was the little kick in the butt I needed. And that is a siren. Because I've been spending so much time, because, I was sick and then I had surgery and blah, 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 complain fest, that when it came to my days off from work, I'm not doing anything. Not doing anything productive. I had an appointment yesterday, and that's it. Other than that, it was, I study Japanese and I meditate every day. Those are my minimal daily activities. But aside from that, it's just video games, movies, what have you. So I'm glad that I've been inspired to record this next episode, which will hopefully lead into the next and the next and so on. Um, so on the topic of work and co-workers, so as I said, I already said the S word once. The first episode of the Lathan Minich Show was titled Porn and Suicide. I will heretofore refer to. Let's not make this complicated, Lathan. I have a friend, or I guess he was a friend. He was a former co-worker at a previous job who has passed away. And without going into too much detail, it is alleged, no one wants to give confirmation on this, and I guess it's understandably so. They don't want to say it if it's not true, but it's alleged that he did it to himself, which is very troubling. And what is, I don't know if this is troubling or, I don't want to use the word interesting because that sounds like, oh, it's interesting about this horrible thing that happened. We worked together at a phone repair company years ago. I spoke previously about this company. I'm not going to mention the name here. That I worked at for 5 years. We worked there together, and then I moved on. I don't know when exactly he moved on, but before he passed, he was working at a fire alarm control company, again, whose name I will not mention. But that company is actually servicing the building that I'm working in right now. So I found out that this former colleague passed away, and he was working for the company that is currently servicing my building at work, which kind of blew me away. So I was able to talk to some of the guys who were working for that company. And they're obviously troubled by it, and they're going to the funeral. I plan to go to the funeral. Yeah, when I'm trying to be, I'm being very, very careful with details right now because nobody has seen or heard this other than that person from work. But the idea is that sooner or later, people will see it and hear it. Maybe a lot of people. And so I want to be very careful about what I say and what kind of details I give out. Because I don't want to put, someone else's business in the streets, so to speak. But yeah. So as I spoke about, oh man, this video is gonna get flagged by YouTube as well, and I'm gonna get some couple emails saying that people are concerned about me, which is very 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 kind of you. But when I talk about like some of the darker thoughts I've had in the past, as I mentioned in the first episode of this podcast, it's a far different thing. And again, this is all allegedly. I'm going to put that on the screen. Well, no, I'm not. That's someone close to me. And again, I hadn't spoken to the guy in a few years. But someone who is semi close to me, just close in that I worked with him, did that. it's, it makes it real. It makes it, I don't want to say too real, because I don't think there's anything such thing as too real. It's either real or isn't. But yeah, it took something as like, this dark negative thought that I've had in the past, and it made it a real thing. And to see the impact that can have on other people's lives, and all the things that I've seen people say, like, oh, why didn't he reach out? I could have talked him out of it, this kind of thing. And I'm sure that's probably something that a lot of people say when these things happen, is that, why didn't he reach out? Why didn't he talk to someone? Why didn't he get help? I could have talked him out of it. So it's just something to think about. It really, it really offered me some insight and perspective on my own inner thoughts. And helped me to appreciate, I guess, my life and what I still have here, despite all the pessimism and negativity that depression brings. Anyway, wow, that got dark. So that is, it is what it is. I mean, that is that topic, and yeah, it's gonna be dark. But yeah, I think we're gonna move on from that. Just again, in keeping with the theme with mental health and mental illness, if you feel that you have a problem, if you feel like something's not right with your head, with your heart, anything, just reach out to someone. Yeah, just seek out the help, because the help is out there. We've all got, we've all got smartphones. Google something. Talk to your doctor. I mean, before I was giving this little speech about seek out help if you feel you need it, in just regards to depression and anxiety, or just not feeling right, or what have you. Now we're talking about, someone taking that final step that you can't step back from. Now, if you're thinking about doing that, I mean, call 911, call a helpline. Cuz yeah, it's there's no coming back from that, obviously. Woo. Wow, okay. Yeah, I guess I'm just going to leave that there. Such a dark place to leave the podcast. But it's real. Like I said, it's just real. That's reality. That's real life, and you got to deal with it. So whatever it is in your life, just deal with it. Do something about it. Seek the help. I'm repeating myself. I'm gonna move on. As I said, this has been the Lathan Minich Show, episode 3. Right? What am I doing here? Did I talk about what I am doing here? What am I doing here? Well, like I said, talk about mental health. Basically, talk about my life. I've gone back and forth on this because, I watch YouTube videos and talk about making a podcast, and everything I read and listen to and watch about creating content, it's very business focused. It's like, if you want to make this a business, if you want to make money, this is how you do it. And I would absolutely like to make money off of this and make this into a business. However, that is not the point. I look forward to money being a result of what I do, not the reason for what I do. To quote Simon Sinek from his book Start With Why. Because they talk about like find your niche and then dig into that niche and then do this and do that. And I look at everything I've done so far as my content, and it hasn't followed any of that. Basically, I still feel like I'm flying by the seat of my pants to to use an old saying. And you know what? That's fine. That's who I am. That's where I am right now. At some point, I'll have a more consistent. I'll definitely have a more consistent content flow. Um, these episodes will be better planned out because as it was, like I said, I got the I got the itch to record an episode. Um, and so I did. Um, and I just wrote down a list of things like, okay, I'm going to talk about this, talk about this, talk about this. And one of the things I didn't even think about until I was recording, which was that last thing. And so this is how I'm doing it. And this is where I'm at. It's therapeutic for me, basically, right now. And the more I do it, the more I think it would be beneficial to me. And I'm hoping it'll be beneficial to someone else. I hope it can reach someone else and help them as well, as content in the past has helped me. Anyway, yeah, I think that's it. If you enjoyed watching and or listening and want to support the show, does it sound like I'm reading? You can do so by following the Lathan Minich Show on Apple, Spotify, and on most of the top podcasting platforms out there. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@LathanMinich for the video episodes. I can be reached on social media at Lathan Minich on Instagram and Twitter, currently known as X, and Facebook.com/Lathan Minich. Once again, if you need help, talk to someone. Reach out to someone, to a professional, a friend, a loved one. But for now, I'm just going to say thank you so much for joining me and have a great day.